So, in today's video, I want to talk about one question, and that is just basically why is the Raspberry Pi such a popular single board computer, or even computer in general? All it is it's literally a $35 computer, and it has so many sales all over the world. So many people know it, and there are so many possibilities that you can accomplish while using your Raspberry Pi. But why is it so popular? Why is another single board computer not as popular? Or so like that. So in this video, I'm going to be trying just to answer those questions and tell you my thoughts about this one thing. So if you don't know what the Raspberry Pi is, if you're new to this, it's basically a single board computer that can accomplish many things that a normal desktop computer can't do. It's not as powerful because it is using an ARM chip. And so here we are over on the Raspberry Pi org website. And if we go over to hardware, you see that they've expanded so much. They have a Raspberry Pi 400, which is basically the Raspberry Pi in a keyboard. We have a Pico, we have a Model B, and they still sell the older versions on the website even the first Raspberry Pi. So that is a pretty encouraging thing. If the company is still selling the older versions, it means they're still getting sales. So to see that even the older versions of the Raspberry Pis are still getting sold are pretty cool. So the Raspberry Pi the first one was launched in 2012, and I'm looking at this BBC article right now, and you see right here it says with sales of 36 million units. That is a lot. The Raspberry Pi is already the best-selling British computer ever made. So this is the best-selling British computer ever to have existed. So that is a pretty big accomplishment right there. Plus, 36 million is no small number. That is a lot of computers, and so many people use them all over the world, especially right now since we are in this corona times where lots of kids have to do online school. Parents are actually just getting them like a Raspberry Pi 400, slapping them up with this old monitor, and they're using that for their online learning. So there are just so many possibilities that you can accomplish while using a Raspberry Pi. So that is one of the reasons why that it is a really low cost desktop computer. Like as you see right here, it's tiny, it's cheap, and it works really well. So the second reason I think is pretty much the operating systems, the opportunities that you can accomplish while using this thing. There are so many different distributions or even different operating systems. You can get Windows on your Raspberry Pi. You can get Linux. You can get Ubuntu, Raspberry Pi OS, Manjaro. You get Arch. You can get Chromium OS. Like there are just so many. You can even get Android. There are so many opportunities and things that are available for this tiny Raspberry Pi. And that is just because there is a big community. So right there, that's the second reason. The community. The third reason, I mean. The community of the Raspberry Pi is so big. If you go over to the Raspberry Pi forums, you look down here, you see there are tons of things. There are tons of people who own these Raspberry Pis and just play around with them. It's their hobby, like it's my hobby, and they are over on these Raspberry Pi forums helping out and asking questions. And you go over to YouTube, you look at the Raspberry Pi videos, they're getting tons of views, tons of comments. You go over to Discord right here, you see in the servers, there's tons of people using the Raspberry Pi. And the community is actually a nice community. They're not like toxic or they're not mean or anything like that. They literally are kind, encouraging people. So that is one reason why the Raspberry Pi is so big. You got that awesome community. You got all those awesome operating systems available. It's cheap. It's really easy to use. Honestly, there's tons of tutorials out there on YouTube or on the Raspberry Pi website, and it keeps on developing and getting more and more powerful. It just keeps on growing in its opportunities and expandability. So that is, and then, yeah, so, and they keep on releasing new versions, new software to make the experience better for the user. That is another reason. Like, there are tons of other single board computers out there, like the Rock Pi 4, other ones like that, but they just don't get as much help from the organization, like the Raspberry Pi org does so many updates to Raspberry Pi OS, and they really maintain it to make it work the best it can on the Raspberry Pi 4. While other ones, you go and look at their operating system list, there's like 2, and a lot of them just run Android, and I'm not really wanting to buy a single board computer to run Android. That's just my personal preference. But yeah, the Raspberry Pi, like I said again, it has so many things that you can literally run on it. It's just so awesome. So this was basically my thoughts on why the Raspberry Pi is literally so popular. And like this is an older article from 2020. Well, it's actually pretty new, but it just talks about right here on how much the Raspberry Pi has changed the world. This $35 computer, and this computer is being used in tons of different things. I've been outside in public areas, and I've seen them using Raspberry Pis to show like displays and different awesome stuff like that. So it is really becoming a normal thing where it's really getting more famous, and lots of more people are learning about this single board computer. So it's a really cool computer, and that is why it's so popular. If you have anything else you would like to add to this, let me know down below in the comments, and let me know, why do you love your Raspberry Pi? Is it do you love it even? And if you do, tell me why. So if you thought this video was cool, please hit that like button, and yeah, thanks for watching.